ahead. My name is Haru Ingram, and I will be chairing for most of today's proceedings. So the purpose for today's event is to launch the fourth and final episode of the Mosul and the Islamic State podcast. We're also here to release the research paper that helped to inform some of the podcasts titled The Long Jihad, the Islamic State's Method of Insurgency. And I think most importantly, especially for the program and for the podcast team, is we're here to hear from an excellent lineup of keynote speakers. Now, for those of you who have been following Mosul and the Islamic State, a key theme of the series and a focal point of upcoming applied research projects for the program on extremism, and we'll be announcing those very, very soon, has been to centralize the experiences, insights, and practices of locals. And so the opening session of today's event is completely devoted to bringing the experiences of Iraqis, particularly those from Mosul and Sinjar, to the fore, addressing a range of issues from the efforts of the Yazidi community to seek justice for the crimes committed by Daesh, for those actions to be recognized and prosecuted as genocide, the efforts, but also the challenges facing Mosuli women, and the role of culture, music, and the arts to not only push back against violent extremism, but more importantly, to help to strengthen and encourage Mosuli identities. Now, it is really my great privilege to introduce, in order of appearance, Murad Ismail, the co-founder and president of the Sinjar Academy. Many of you will have heard his powerful testimony, particularly in part 1 of episode 4, which was released last week. We then have Nadia Navrazov, the legal advocacy director of Yazda. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Amin Moqdad, the immensely talented musician whose music features throughout the Mosul and Islamic State podcast, and whose testimonies throughout the episodes actually have been amongst the most memorable. Certainly, as an Australian, I had several of my Australian friends talk to me about the AC/DC stories. So thank you, Amin, for being here. Azmir Khalid, a Moslawi entrepreneur who features in part 2 of episode 4, which has been released this morning. Thank you, Azmir, for your insights on the podcast and also for appearing as one of our keynote speakers today. And I think that the insights that Azmir will provide into the experiences of Mosuli women and also more broadly the business sector is going to be really interesting and eye-opening, I think, for our audience today. And finally, we will have Ahmed Al-Bashir, the comedian and the journalist of Al-Bashir Show fame. So we're very much looking forward to what is going to be a really great lineup of keynote speakers for today. Just to very quickly go through the format, the structure, for those of you who have attended program on extremism events before, each speaker will have about 10 minutes. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, there won't be a Q&A with our opening speakers. We'll wrap up the first session with Omar Mohammed, who will thank our guests and provide some opening remarks. And the idea is that that will then transition into a moderated discussion. On that note, please send through your questions as we are proceeding. Don't wait until the end. Omar and I will do our best to answer as many of those questions as possible. So to begin the opening session today, Mr. Murad Ismail. Sir, thank you very much.
Hello. Hey, good morning, everyone. Hororo, thank you so much for the introduction. Omar Hororo, I really am thankful to you for organizing this session and also for the podcast, which really brings lights to important issues that have not been discussed before. I would really also like to especially thank Omar and Mosul Eye for being a witness, for being a trusted voice over the years for all the Iraqis since 2014. Many of us have watched work and has really made a great impact. It's also a great honor to be among some of very strong Iraqi voices today with Ahmed, Asma, Amin, and Nadia. Ahmed's voice to me is reshaping Iraqi politics, and in my opinion, it is making it better. And each one of the panelists here have contributed in their own way into Iraqi future. Many people across, not just people here, many people across Iraq are working very hard to the country. What communities in Iraq have suffered and continue to suffer is beyond comprehension. Thousands of people were killed, tortured, displaced, abused, and for many, life will never go back to normal. There are hundreds of thousands of widows and orphans across Iraq today. There are millions without jobs. There are millions who are still displaced. We do not want to compare suffering. What's more, what's less? Who suffered more or who suffered less? Because every human being matters, and because every case matters, and every town across Iraq matters. What happened to the Yazidi community, and we experienced it firsthand, was really beyond anything that we could ever imagine will happen to our community. We never imagined our women, our girls, and our children will be sold, will be raped, will be tortured in the way we saw. We never thought we will be treated in this way in our own country, in our own homes. Every Yazidi became a target for no reason but for who they were. My cousin Naif, who was disabled, and for many months he was waiting for me to send him a wheelchair. He was left behind by his family in Tel Azir, and he was later killed by ISIS, partly because the family didn't have a car to take him. My neighbor his name was Dilsher. He was right in front of our house. He was 15 or 16. During the genocide, he was also probably killed. He has been missing since that time. My classmate in the high school, Ibrahim, he was taken with his entire family and they were kidnapped. Ibrahim is still missing. He was in Talafar for a long time with about 500 Yazidi men, and probably they were all killed. His sisters are still enslaved. Within 2 weeks or few weeks, about 1,200 Yazidis were either killed or taken captives. Yazidi community is a very small community, and this was just too much for a very small community. We still have about 2,700 Yazidi women, girls in captivity. The Yazidi homeland is still destroyed, and the people are largely displaced. More than 200,000 people are displaced to IDP camps in the Kurdistan region. Not only that, our homeland have become a political arena where the goal is not to bring normality back to this region, but rather who can control the land and who can use it for smuggling and other purposes, other regional purposes. So for these reasons and many other reasons, the Yazidi community is increasingly feeling hopeless. And really not just the Yazidis, but most of the Iraqis feel hopeless, especially the religious minority. The Christian community, for example, from about 1.5 million, there's only 200,000 people who left behind. That's also for smaller communities. That's for a lot of the Iraqi youth who really seek ways to leave the country. But I think in order to move forward, we have to act. And one of the actions that we suggest is that the justice must be established and ISIS members must be held accountable in transparent courts. And this has not been taken place so far. We still have not seen any serious trials against ISIS members. And I think for all the communities of Mosul, it's really important to see the justice is taking its role and that we build the next life or the next level of situation on good terms, and the terms should be transparent justice. But I think Iraq as a whole is in deep troubles, and it's incapable to meet the demands of all Iraqi citizens. And if Iraq fails to address the many issues we see today, starting with a better political system, better governance, rule of law, and better economy, to me, Iraq cannot stand as a country. It will fall once again, as it did, and it will be very, very quickly. In Sinjar Academy study we did just in September this year, about 76% of the Yazidi youth are unemployed. And these are mostly people with degrees. And this is across Iraq. Millions of Iraqis are jobless and are hopeless. But clearly today, we have many fights to fight. A fight against corruption, a fight against dysfunctional system, post-2003 political system, a fight against foreign interventions. We see Iraqi neighbors intervening day and night with airstrikes, with direct interventions, with arming groups. We need to carry on a fight against an institutional injustice, and many Iraqis have been treated with injustice, and that's in the system. We have to fight against the persecution on the base of identity and the base of the faith. But finally, despite all the disappointments, and that many of us feel, that many of us are actually victims of that disappointment and failure of building a country, I believe we have to carry on, because there are possibilities, but these possibilities require Iraqis to work together, to accept each other's, to see each other first as human beings. And if we can do that, the future can be bright. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murad, for your comments this morning, and of course for your contributions to the podcast and your ongoing work in Iraq as the director of the Sinjar Academy. I mean, we've really appreciated it, and very, very important insights there. So thank you very much. Next we have Nadia Navrazov. Thank you.
Thank you. So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. I would like to start by congratulating Omar, Haroro, and Andrew and the program on extremism at George Washington University for this powerful podcast. This podcast is really a piece of history that needs to be kept preciously. Thank you also for inviting me to speak today. I am a Yazidi myself, and I have been working with the NGO Yazda in Iraq to document Daesh crimes against the Yazidi community for more than 3 years now. I am also working directly with Yazidi survivors on transitional justice issues in Iraq. Yazidis have a long history of persecution, and according to our history, before Daesh attacks, we have already survived 73 other attacks. Fear, but also the will to survive, are in our DNA. I will not repeat the historical background that led to Daesh attacks in Sinjar. Murad has already covered some of it, and I also invite you to listen to the podcast. I will rather start by saying something that is obvious. Daesh committed genocide against the Yazidis of Iraq. The genocide was recognized by dozens of states and entities, and this year alone by UNITAD and by the Dutch and Belgian governments. The Iraqi government has also formally recognized the Yazidi genocide in March of this year by passing the Yazidi Survivors Law, a law that is meant to provide reparation to Daesh survivors. Thousands of Yazidi survivors' testimonies describe how men were killed, how children were brainwashed and used as child soldiers, how women and girls were sexually enslaved. Sinjar could not have a Sinjar I because by the 16th of August 2014, there was no single free Yazidi in the area anymore. All were either killed, displaced, or enslaved. Yazda alone has recorded around 2,000 stories of Yazidi survivors and documented over 100 crime scenes in Sinjar, including mass graves, kill site, destroyed Yazidi temples and shrines, captivity sites, but also ISIS headquarters. We are sharing this information with accountability mechanism, and we are also actively building cases in the hope to bring some justice to survivors. We have testimonies in which survivors clearly identify the perpetrators, some of them who were their Arab neighbors, for generations before turning against them and betraying them. Thousands of Yazidi women and girls were taken to Mosul, specifically to Galaxy Hall, a former wedding hall. There, they were separated based on age, virginity, and beauty. Some of the survivors committed suicide in this hall because death was a better option than being with ISIS. Others were distributing among Daesh fighters in Mosul and spent sometimes years enslaved in the city. Today's many survivors are still afraid to set foot in Mosul, even to go there and to redo their ID cards, for example. So on one hand, we have all these stories. We have thousands of victims who are ready to speak. We have the bones of thousands of victims, but still there is no justice. As Murad said, in Iraq, there has been no single trial against ISIS members for crimes against the Yazidis. So why is that? The main reason is that Iraq doesn't have a legal framework to prosecute ISIS for these crimes. This is even more astonishing when we know that a US team, UNITAD, was created by the UN Security Council in 2017 with the consent of Iraq to collect evidence of Daesh crimes. Because of this lack of legal framework, UNITAD itself can't now use that evidence in Iraq. A few months ago, there was a discussion to establish an ISIS court to prosecute international crimes in Iraq, but it led to nowhere, mainly because of political tensions between the Kurdistan region of Iraq and because of the federal government. And once again, survivors were not involved in the discussion. So what is currently happening in terms of Daesh accountability in Iraq? These ISIS members in Iraq are mainly prosecuted for membership to a terrorist group. Thousands of trials are taking place to eliminate Daesh and its followers and to erase a pan of recent history. These trials last between 5 and 20 minutes and are mainly based on confession, obtained under pressure and sometimes even under torture. No Yazidi survivors are involved, even when perpetrators admit themselves that they had Yazidi survivors in captivity. I think that there is no need to say that this is not the justice Yazidi survivors want. This is also not what the Iraqi society needs. Iraqi society needs proper trials to build historical record to understand the roots of Daesh. One of the main takeaways from the podcast is that Daesh did not appear out of nowhere, like mainstream media, it often makes look like, and like it is often perceived also by Western societies. Daesh is an Iraqi, but also a global issue that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, history will repeat itself, and in 5, 10, or even 30 years, a new extremist group with a new name, but a similar ideology will emerge and find new followers. So the absence of justice in Iraq, does it mean that Yazidis do not have justice at all? Actually, there is a handful of cases abroad, mainly in Germany, and especially 6 trials have been opened so far. And in all these cases, victims are represented by our legal counsel, human rights lawyer Amal Clooney. And 5 of these 6 cases are against German female ISIS members who had enslaved victims, Yazidi victims in their household. 4 of these 5 women were already convicted and 1 case is still ongoing. The other case in Germany is the only genocide trial, and it is against an Iraqi national from Fallujah who had enslaved 2 Yazidi victims and caused the death of 1 of them. The other Yazidi victim in that case was identified by Yazda, and we helped her to join the proceedings in Germany. There are also a handful of investigations in Europe, especially in countries like France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. I will not go into the details. So these cases abroad, the absence of cases in Iraq and these cases abroad mean that Yazidi survivors must travel thousands of kilometers from home to hope to see justice, and also show that even though 40,000 people from 110 different countries joined Daesh, there's still no global strategy on how to prosecute them. European states, for the most, deprive their nationals from their citizenship or leave them in prisons in Syria and in Iraq. So again, the roots of the issue is not addressed, and this is not sustainable. So what justice do survivors want? The best way to get an answer is to simply ask them the question. Survivors often highlight the importance of criminal justice with international involvement, but they also ask for other forms of justice. They ask for the remaining mass graves in Sinjar to be excavated. They ask that the Iraqi and international community search for their 2,700 missing people. They ask for reparation, for education, and simply for a safe and peaceful life. I would like to finish by saying this. Criminal justice is not the only form of justice, and unfortunately, not all Daesh survivors will have their day in court, simply because their perpetrator is either already dead, is being prosecuted without their involvement, or will never be captured. By Daesh survivors, I mean not only Yazidis, but also Christians, Turkmens, Kakai, Shabaks, Shias, and Sunnas. All these groups are part of the Iraqi society, and after surviving Daesh, I am confident to say that all want the same, a better Iraqi society. For that society to emerge, Iraq also needs to establish a truth commission. This truth commission would hear out the society and enable it to write history and learn from past mistakes. The podcast created by Omar, Hararo, and Andrew is a truth-telling platform that needs to happen on the state level and that needs to be accessible to everyone who wants to speak out. With such a truth commission, people of Mosul could finally explain to the world, and more importantly, to the rest of the Iraqi society, what really happened when Daesh came, and also what they have suffered under these 3 years of occupation. And finally, Yazidis will be able to say to the rest of the Iraqi society, no, we are not devil worshippers. We can't continue to be treated like second-class Iraqi citizens for another 100 years. And they will also be able to ask this important question: why no one did anything to protect us? And also, what can we do together as the new Iraqi society to ensure that this really never happens again? Thank you for your attention, and thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Nadia, for your remarks there. Very powerful and very important points. The legal concerns that you've highlighted there, both the opportunities, but also the challenges, and the importance of the Truth Commission, I think, are things which I hope that our audience can take from this, and certainly the work that we all intend to do, try to move forward. And obviously also thanks for the work that you do with Yazda as well, of course. Next, we have Amin speaking next. So thank you very much, Amin.
Hello, everybody. I want to thank this amazing trio who did all that work, and I really feel honored to be part of this and to be part with all these messengers, I would say, Murad, Nadia, and Asman, for sure, Ahmed, and all of the trio. I like to call it the trio. So I don't know actually what to say after what Murad and Nadia said. I'm shaking actually right now. And I mean, I really admire and respect all the work that they said, and the powerful word and peace they have inside, not to speak about anyone in a bad way. They just try to make justice in a peaceful way, and to take revenge from war through peace. And this is very powerful, believe me. I don't know. I feel I'm a musician, and I feel I'm more aggressive in music than this amazing word what you said. So let me tell you a short story about Mosul and what Mosul is in culture and music. I will focus on music. If we go back in time and to the time when Ziryab, the great musicians, went to Spain, and who was teaching him, someone from Mosul, Ishaq al-Musali, some great musician used to play with in the main castle, the royal castle in the Khilafat back in time. And I will not go back there. I will just go to the 80s, to the 18th century, when Mullah Uthman Musali born, and he become this great influencer, musician. He's a mixed character between religion and music and culture. He's a phenomenal in that time, and lots of musicians we know now, and from the new ages we know, they were students. I mean, they pass away, but they work with Kulthum and so on. And he was someone born in Mosul. And again, Munir Bashir and Jamil Bashir were the greatest oud influencers in Mosul. They are from Christian families. And so then Kan'an Wasfi, he's an amazing musician and actor, worked in Egypt, and he's a very famous, and I know everybody know that, and so on and so on. There's so many things if we just spoke about a small perspective about the music. But there's a common story between these 4 or 5 or 6 or 10 musicians, even me. If some people consider me as a Musali, or some people consider me, I'm not a Musali. There's a common thing that everybody born in this city and become a musician left the city and died abroad. Like, this is a really crazy thing. But because there's a small, tiny thing that I really like to have the chance now and today to make a big reminder to the people, our people, the Musali and their Iraqis and all the Arab world and all the world actually, that we have to learn from the mistakes. We have to understand why that happened and really put a red line on the text, I would say, who lead us to this. What happened with the rejection the music, rejecting the art, rejecting life, rejecting sculptures, rejecting Yazidis, rejecting Christians, rejecting every single different person than the majority in the country is something really, really, really we have to focus on and really put a red line on this, and we have to fix it because there's no life after. And what happened to Yazidis and the Christian and all the, I hate to say minorities because they are not minorities. All that happened because we were trying to close our eyes on some crazy text. It's some people are walking on. The people who say you are kafir or you are doing haram or whatever, these things, they base on things. They based on true books. That these books are, there's something in these books. So I'm not asking people to reconsider their religion or change it or something, but they have to be willing to fix the issues there, because I will be so brave and I will be so sharp in that. And if the minorities didn't speak about it, I will speak about that, because I feel very responsible and I feel inside very guilty if I stayed quiet. I'm a musician. I'm using music. I'm using philosophy to change this fact. Recently, I made 2019, I made after many projects with the first project was in Mosul, was with Omar and Mosulai, when we did the first concert in the Nabi Yunus mosque. And I just spoke about that in a very, very clear way, that this big mountain of differences, which is Nabi Yunus, like there's an Ashurian castle, there's a Jewish temple, there's a church, and a mosque. And if we just notice that this rejection and the ignorance that we have all built these layers and nobody learned, like each one who had the power just build another thing on the other. So later end up, the Muslims destroyed their own mosques. This is something very funny and very true, that it gives us a lot of light that we could understand why that happened. I spent the 2 years while ISIS time thinking about that, reading, like, believe me, so many books, and trying to understand why this is happening, why we have the same scenario every time, because we simply don't learn from that. So here I'm trying to say it for the history, that we are the mistaken, all the Iraqis, if we spoke about Iraqis, because we have to learn. Enough blood, enough ignorance, enough changing layers and coloring on the dust. I would not color on the dust. I was back to the project that I did in 2019. Light Orchestra was an orchestra made by different people, ladies and boys in Mosul. And basically, I will share with you 2 questions from the interviews. We had more than 200 participants in only 1 month. So people really like music. They are willing to change. So we have to help them and to encourage their bravery. So the first question was, I just simply asked the people, what is your religious opinion about the music? Because this is very important for me. I don't want a person learning music, playing music, then feeling guilty that it's haram and he would never do it. And I try to prove to the people, or the students who were applying to that, from their own text, which is in Quran, that even God using music in the judgment day, and but with music, he just rise everybody from death. And why, like, everybody say, like, God have the power and the willing just to make this and everything will become alive or dead, but he have an angel, he have a musical instrument, and he used the music to waking up all the humanity. So this is a big statement that makes us go back to the text and find out why this thing. So we have to be brave. And I know there's a sharp rules in the Islamic text that we cannot really make any comments or something, but I think today is the day that we really consider the things, because again, it's not about the text, it's about also the human brain and the attention that the human brain, we have the evil and the good in the same person. So this is a small summary about everything what I want to say, and I admire everything that everybody, every single one of you do that. And I just decided to be, I don't know, the sheep, or the sacrifice sheep, to speak about that. But I feel very responsible to speak about that, because this is the fact. And we have to be very clear, very clear. We have a problem in a very tiny places, and we have to start from it. So really can make change in a historical way, because enough is enough. And that's why I'm making music. I'm using music as a tool to make change. And now Light Orchestra is playing in the streets, and they just start to teach each other, teach more people, basing on the answers they did give to me in their interviews, and then conversations we have about religion, and nobody felt scared. But again, the nowadays the powerful forces in the country, which is For instance, in Mosul, the second day of the project, we got attacked. Usually people will say from ISIS, but no, we got attacked from the Iraqi security members, that we are not allowed to do that because they thought it's like something creepy are happening. Even when they enter, they saw musical instruments and they saw people, boys and girls sitting together, very nice, dressed and educated. So there's not only like the religious or the extreme religious who's affecting all the things. No, all the powerful forces there are interfering with things. So it's not a statement about religion again. I don't want to be in that corner, but it's a statement about power, and a statement about justice. As Nadia said, if we need a real justice, we need a really clear law who are inspired by so many countries have a perfect, not perfect, I would say, we are still trying to, the humans still trying to get a perfect law, but we can just get inspired from others. And there's so many diverse communities live in peace, at least peaceful more than our lives. So we can just put our ignorance and ego away and learn from them, try to get inspired. So this is all what I want to say. And thank you so much for having me here. And I feel so honored to be in front of each single soul of you.
I mean, thank you very much. And once again, you know, from the program here, Omar and Andrew, myself, thank you very much for your contributions. And again, the music featured in the Mosul Islamic State podcast is by Amin, and we've also provided a link to Amin's Spotify there, so you can follow his music. Of course, highly recommended. So please do that. And thank you again, Amin. Our next speaker is Azmir Khalid. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me here. It was a great pleasure to participate in this podcast and to be here today with you. What I really want to talk about, I will not talk about a specific group. I will talk about the city itself. Personally, I've been born and raised and grow up and lived my entire life in Mosul. So the city means a lot to me. Though I escaped when ISIS seized over the city, I was out, but there was always that feeling that we need to do something. Waiting is not enough. Praying may not be enough. We need actions to do. So these actions started when the liberation battle started, when the people were escaping the city. We tried to help as much as possible, providing aids to those who are running the battles in the camps and wherever we can help. Then when we came back to the city, there was a lot of destruction, a lot of the city was not the same city I used to live in. Whenever I go to any place, I just used to look around, and the first thing comes up to my mind that wasn't like this. And if we will wait for the government or for someone else to help to rebuild, this is gonna take decades. We need to start from ourselves. And here there was an urgent need for girls and women to have a rule and to do something. So yeah, I was only 20 years maybe, but I felt it's the time to do something, and I can do something. I started with voluntary works during my college study, and I kept doing that till I graduated. Now I've entered the entrepreneurial environment. We are trying to build an entrepreneur community here in Mosul, to support the startups, to support the young people who have ideas that may help building and reconstructing the city, to build a better place, maybe not for us, but for the next generations, for our children who may come, to have a better city to live in. So I'm not talking about a specific group, I'm talking about the city itself, including everyone who lives in the city, whether it was Arab, Kurd, Yazidis, Christian, Muslim, it doesn't matter, they're all eventually humans. So yeah, it takes time, it needs a lot of efforts, but we are doing it, especially girls and women. Maybe before ISIS, before 2014, we didn't used to see a lot of feminine movement in the city. But now I believe that girls and women are doing a great job to help and support what the males are doing, because together we can build a better community, we can do a better job. And personally, I also believe that youth can do a lot, because especially those who left the city, they've seen the difference when they lived outside. They've seen the rules, the developed countries, what they have, and when they come back to Mosul, they know what the city exactly needs, where we can start with and where we can end. So yeah, I believe in power of youth, I believe in power of women and what they can do to help the city, not only the city, but also its people, because the more we have a reconstruction and rebuilding, the more we have opportunities here, the more we have like a system we can build and we can work with. This will help everyone who's living in the city, and will help, of course, the next generations coming, will help provide a better environment for everyone. And of course, when you start with Mosul, maybe we can grow up and we can help maybe entire Iraq, who knows? Like this is something can happen. We dream big, so we may have better things to come. Personally, that's all what I want to say. Thanks for having me again here, and it's been an honor for me to meet you all, and thanks again.
Thank you, Asma. And in part 2 of episode 4, which is which has been released this morning, please do listen in, and you'll hear Asma talk about the importance of entrepreneurship, of entrepreneurs, of supporting businesses in Mosul, but also the opportunities and challenges facing Mosuli women. Really, just vital insights and context for what is the final episode of the series, which is out today. Our next speaker is Ahmed Al-Bashir, and we're really looking forward to hearing from him. And thank you very much, Ahmed.
Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you very much for inviting. Thank you, Omar, for all the staff who worked on the podcast. And I don't want to take too much of your time. I'll try to make it short as I can. Al-Bashir Show was launched in 2014, specifically in August 2014, when ISIS took 3 major provinces in Iraq. And it was very critical time to start these kind of shows to talk about what's happening in Iraq, because violence was everywhere. It's almost sectarian war. And people were mobilizing almost against each other. It was very critical time. And the first episode that we discussed in the Al-Bashir Show was the sectarianism in Iraq, which was almost stepping on the fire and playing with the fire. It was very risky, but we made it happen. And we were the first show in Iraq that talked about ISIS and made fun of ISIS and made them regular stupid people that everyone can fight, because at the beginning people were very scared to fight ISIS because they thought these are invincible people. No one can fight them. They kill you. They take everything, and they could take 3 provinces in a few days. So they are very powerful people. So Al-Bashir Show was one of the reasons that people started to regain the trust of themselves, especially the new generation. Actually, when Al-Bashir Show was launched, I used to say that Al-Bashir Show was created to fight sectarianism, terrorism, and to be part of establishing re-establishing the relation between Iraqis. But a few days ago, I discovered the right words that why Al-Bashir Show was created. Bashir Show was created to break the chain of violence. And this is exactly what I've learned from the new generation, the young men and women who went out on Tishreen, who are now rebuilding Mosul after what happened with ISIS and the city was destroyed. For example, after all that happened in Mosul, I see the new generation, the new women and men is trying to prove to the world that this generation wants to live. They don't want to be like, I don't want to say the old generation. I would say they don't want to be like a part of the game, like just they come and take revenge, and then another generation come to take the revenge, and this cycle will never end. So I think this new generation is trying to prove to the world that this is not what they want. They want to survive. They want to live. They want to show to the world that we're just like you. We love life. We want to be part of the world. We don't want to be connected to any terrorism group or sectarianism group. And in Mosul, the new generation proved it by helping each other, by helping, rebuilding the city, painting the streets, providing businesses to the people who are in need. And in other provinces, like for example, Baghdad and the South provinces, you have Tishreen and the protest also. They also proved to the world that they want two major things. They want life, good life, and they want justice. Justice is not revenge. It's a different thing. So I believe the new generation, I have high hopes with the new generation, although there's lots of people saying that it's going to be the same, nothing will change, but I truly believe in this generation. I believe the whole changes in the future will happen on their hands, and it's going to be good change. They will not walk on the same path that the old people took. What happened for the podcast and what happened with the Yazidis, I don't want to talk about it because I think you covered it all, guys, and you talked about it very much, and it's very sad and what happened to the Yazidis. But I want to say this. I would say you triggered this in my mind that I've never did a full episode for what happened to the genocide for the Iraqi people, for the Iraqi audience. So I want to say today that we in Al-Bashir Show will produce an episode with the help of Murad, if he can help us, and the help of Nadia and Omar, and to tell the Iraqi people what happened to the Yazidi community. Because the other day when I tweeted something about what happened to the Yazidis, my audience was surprised, like, really, this happened? So I think there's mismessaging between the Iraqis, the whole provinces of Iraq, and what happened to the Yazidis. Because we know what happened to the people of Mosul. We know what happened to Speicher. In Speicher, we know what happened in Anbar and El Bunimr, for example, these genocides. But the Yazidis, yes, they are Iraqis, and we need to focus on them. So thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for letting me talk. And I think we concluded something that we created an episode, so you guys will work with us for the next few months.
Ahmed, thank you for this, because this is also a question raised by one of the attendees, Qasim Umar. So I think his wish is granted. I really appreciate that you will dedicate part of your show to the Yazidi genocide. What you will do, what Amin was saying, what Nadia and Murad, what Asma, all what you have mentioned is truly the way forward. It's truly what we really need to think, and the way and the approach we should think about our future. There is no space for more conflicts, because more conflicts means more death of our people, our beloved ones, and we cannot afford more losses. Thank you all for your important contribution. I would like also to thank Program on Extremism for hosting and helping in producing the podcast, which I can see from what you said, those who listened to the podcast and many people who told me that it was important to them because it reflected what they wanted to say. It's in fact the main purpose why we created this podcast, is to let the people speak for themselves. And since she just attended, I was trying to move directly to give her the stage. I would like to invite Dashni Murad, one of the most active people in Iraq and in Kurdistan, who uses her music and songs of freedom to spread the words of love and the spreads of the words of peace. Dashni, the floor is yours, and thank you for accepting the invitation in this very short notice. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was very inspired by all of you, and I just want to add what comes to my heart. I always learn so much from Mr. Ismail on Twitter, as well from Mosul, and I was very inspired by, how music can change so much. I believe that it's one of the most powerful tools out there. About a week ago, I was invited by a beautiful team to visit Sinjar. And it was so beautiful to be there. The only thing that stayed with me was the beautiful fig that I ate fresh from the tree, and the honey that I bought from the bazaar that I still eat every day. That's what stayed in my mind. When I went there on the road, we passed by one of the best breakfast places in Mosul, and it was 7 in the morning, and it was so beautiful. And I remember I messaged Mr. Umar on Mosul everything made me think of all of the dreams and ideas of greening Mosul. And I think right now what the young people need the most is to have a space that promises a prosperous future. And by that, I mean libraries, galleries, parks, and a place to work out, a place where they can meet and express themselves. I understand and I see how great organizations like Yazda and others are working so hard to continue bring foreign aid, to rebuild infrastructure, and to provide safety and security. That must continue for now and forever. But at the same time, it is up to us, the people on the ground, to make sure that we leave the hate behind and just find a way to build whatever we can with so much love and with so much joy, because the hate is so much already, and we're all so traumatized and sad and angry, and it's not gonna build us. All we have right now is each other, and I work every day so hard to find anyone within different communities to connect with, to understand, to learn what has been done in the past, what has that to do with me as a woman, as a Kurd in this region. How can I move the conversation forward? What is my role in that? So I would just like to say that we need right now, more than ever, like the Sinjar Academy in Sinjar, more of institutions right now with centers and safe places and colorful places, so that the young women have something right now. They don't have tomorrow. The past is gone. They just have today. And as Mr. Bashir before me also spoke, the young generation are so promising. But it's so dangerous, because when I was in Sinjar, it was just for one day. I talked to a lot of young people, and so many smart people leave school because they're the only breadwinners now after losing so many family members. What will this mean in 5 years and 10 years' time, when the most smart people in a region that is devastated by war after war after war, what will happen? what I see, one of the brightest people that I work with, like PI company who do marketing, the founder is a Yazidi. So I see the brightest people that I've been working with are not just who came back from abroad. They're real locals, whether it's from Mosul or Sinjar or Erbil. And it's usually those people who faced adversity who are the most caring and nurturing. And yeah, again, all I want to add is that please work, all of you, harder every day to make sure that every corner, especially in Mosul and in Sinjar, is filled with libraries and galleries and museums and good schools and good places for the youth, because they need a good space now so that they can live and build a good future. If we don't give them anything today, it will be too late for tomorrow. They're there, they don't need to be empowered. They're amazing. We just need to show investors around the world, organizations around the world, that's their strength. And you need to invest in them because it will benefit the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dashni. And of course, we add to the list your music and your promised song in Mosul. I just want to inform you that Ahmed will have to leave now. He has to go back to prepare Al-Bashir show and also to work. He just assured me, Murad, that he really mean it and he wants to work on this episode dedicated to the Yazidi genocide, and he will need your Nadia's and our help. We will work on this as a group. Thank you so much, Ahmed, for joining us. Now, I just want to announce that with this event, we have just completed the full episodes. The final episode is has been just released, and with that, we have also a very important research paper that informed the podcast. It's called The Long Jihad by Haroro Ingram. And on that, Haroro, I would like to ask you, what do you hope from this paper to inform the readers, especially Iraqis, especially Yazidis, people who have suffered, but also most importantly, the people that Nadia actually was addressing, the policymakers and those who are responsible for making the process of justice always in the right direction.
It is directed to me?
This is to Haroro. Thank you, Rad. I was speaking to Haroro.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Right, well, thank you. And I'll keep my response relatively short. I just want to begin again by just thanking the contributions from all of our speakers today. It's really been fantastic and very important to hear these perspectives. So many of these perspectives have kind of featured in the podcast. And I guess what I'd like to do is just share a couple of reflections that that I think are kind of connected between the podcast and the report. In a sense, like one informed the other. So as you read the report, you'll see a lot of the interviews that are in the podcast are also featured in the report. The way in which ISIS strategy is understood informs the podcast. Now, I think that perhaps if there was, if there was a couple of things that I hope that people could take from both of these, is that Daesh is a strategic group. Their engagement in actions and their messaging, their engagement in propaganda, it is strategic. It is premeditated. They are quite clear about what their strategies are. This is an organization that is obsessed with paperwork. A lot of our speakers have, those who featured in the podcast actually spoke about this, how Daesh had spoken for years, had written for years about the types of strategies that they intended to apply in practice, not just in terms of their insurgency strategy, but engaging in acts of genocide. And I think that this is what's really important here, is that going to those primary source materials and using those primary source materials, which this report has tried to do. There are dozens of different kind of speeches and documents that feature in this report. It not only provides insights into the internal thinking of this group, and that there is a strategic logic to its actions and to its messaging and to its decision making. But it makes it absolutely clear, if any more evidence was needed, just how premeditated the appalling criminal actions of this group have been. And that's something that really featured in this final episode, was highlighting that this is an organization that is obsessed with paperwork. It is obsessed with being strategic. It looks to the future, but it also looks to its past to try to learn lessons. And it's really important for us, and I think particularly for scholars who are based in the West, as we are at the Program on Extremism, that we are teaming up with local researchers from all around the world. But I hope that what this podcast has demonstrated is what's possible when we do create those links with a whole range of different multi-sector representatives to get those insights, use those insights as the foundation for future work and engagement. And already on this panel, I'm just very, very happy to hear that already you've seen the way that connecting with people creates new and bigger opportunities. And again, I want to thank everybody that is here today for their contributions to the podcast. I want to thank everybody who isn't able to be here today for their contributions to the podcast. And a very, very quick final note. Andrew Mines does the audio editing for this podcast. He's brilliant. He works very, very hard, very, very long hours. And he's the unseen and largely unheard part of this podcast team. But I can assure you that in addition to all the audio editing, he basically does everything else to give Omar and I the space and opportunity to write and produce and to conduct the interviews. So yeah, I just wanted to take this chance to thank Andrew for his fantastic work. And yeah, back to you, Omar. Thank you.
Thank you, Aurora, for mentioning Andrew, because I believe that we have to create a full podcast on how Andrew managed to make sense of the hundreds of hours of discussions between me and Aurora. No human being should actually have to live through this kind of editing, those long hours of discussions. But we did it. We made it. It's been a year. I hope that, as you said, Nadia, this is what we exactly actually meant to do. Is this is part of the history. It's a piece of history. It shouldn't be the only thing that should be produced. It doesn't end. It's keeping the doors and windows open for the others to continue. And to echo on what Haroro said, yes, the potential of creating great opportunities when we bring all of this diversity together, the potential is great. And that's actually what we meant to do. Because in simple words, I mean, they have always tried to break our integrity and our belief in the future and life. That's what they always wanted to do, the terrorists. If we, and I quote Salman Rushdie, how to defeat terrorism, do not be terrorized. But with that comes justice, as you said, Nadia and Murad, not just the criminal justice, but to heal the wounds of the people and to meet all of their needs, to immediately act. That's what we wanted to highlight. But also we wanted to warn the people from the very simplified approach when we discuss and read about events. It's not that simple. It's complicated, but also not that complicated. It requires more time to process the information. Do not just go through the information and say like, well, that's what happened. I'm gonna believe this. No, there is always a story behind what you read. There is always there is hope. There is sadness, but there is also details, small and minor details. And ending with this note, it's in fact that's why I am satisfied that when I hear you all speaking, I feel that we really have a way forward together. I believe we do this, because if you have listened to the episode discussing democracy, despite all of the destruction, when you look at Iraq and you see its people, it's just unbelievable how those young people are a true believer in democracy and they really want to build a better life. They have been crushed years after years with corruption, with destruction, with violence. Yet look at them. I mean, they love this life and they want to continue. So let's not let them down. And again, believe in the importance and the potential of the diversity. It brings great potential. Thank you, Haroro, Andrew, all of you, and I leave it back to you, Haroro, to end the session. We are sorry and we apologize, Haroro, we're keeping you awake. I think it's too late there, but thank you for all the work you have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Omar. I think that with 25 minutes left, I thought that it would be a great opportunity, actually, for all of us just to, I guess, have a discussion while we're here. Because there have been so many issues that have been introduced in today's session. And I know that 10 minutes isn't actually a lot of time to expand. So, I mean, perhaps we could progress somewhat in order here. I mean, Murad and Nadia, there were so many, the legal cases that are being processed at the moment. I mean, this is helping to establish kind of precedents, right, for ongoing efforts. And I'm really curious to hear more about the way in which those cases and the way in which some of those challenges, but also the opportunities from those cases, how you see that impacting future efforts to investigate and to prosecute. I mean, if you could expand upon and reflect upon that a little bit.
Nadia?
Go ahead, Murad, I can go later.
So I think, you know, given the size of the cases or the number of the cases, as Nadia mentioned, you're talking about thousands of cases. And, you know, the Iraqi legal system is not prepared to deal with these cases. And a lot of the conventions they take or confessions they take, I mean, I really don't know how it's done. And we don't see, you know, we have not been asked for any witnesses or victims to go and to be present at the court. So I wouldn't trust it. I think also that creates in the Iraqi society, it creates a lot of issues because when people feel they are unjustly treated in the court, then, you know, you prepare your country for the next wave of radicalism, of sectarian violence. So if you don't do good work with justice, you're not going to prepare yourself for the next stage. But I think the international community is also is bigly at fault here because the international community is not willing to do anything more than UNITAD, which is investigation team. It literally can just collect evidences. And in many cases, there is no way for it to go. The international committee doesn't want to establish a tribunal court. And the ICC doesn't want to take the case, even though it has the base to take the case. And Iraq, of course, doesn't want any international involvement in the justice. So, and you're seeing the situation in Iraq and Syria, and it's very dangerous. You know, imagine if, God forbid, if something like Afghanistan happened, let's say, in any part of Iraq or Syria, where you have thousands of ISIS militants in prison, and it could happen. You know, you have a prison breakout. Maybe in Syria or in Iraq, you know, you prepare the country for a next fallout. It's really serious, but, you know, I guess it just doesn't matter how much we say it. If the people with power do not listen, you know, it doesn't work. So we really need a tribunal court. You know, a tribunal court in Iraq would be able to be on the ground, would be able to take testimonies, would be able to process thousands of cases. And ICC, to me, it will not work either because ICC will only, you know, only can take 5-6 cases of the leadership, which most of them are dead anyway. Yeah, but somebody, you know, some big countries would have to make the commitment and the political will to pass some resolution within the Security Council to establish such a court.
And Nadia, do you have anything to add, particularly on some of these jurisdictional issues?
Yes, thank you. So as Murad said, in Iraq, nothing is going on. And until there is no legal framework, unfortunately, justice will not move forward. But I mentioned cases in Germany, and I think it's very important to highlight that Germany is actually very active in prosecuting ISIS members, not only for membership to a terrorist group, but also for genocide, crimes against humanity, and war crimes. And these are the crimes that Yazidi survivors want to see prosecuted, because these are the crimes that were committed against them. And in Germany, what's interesting is that most of the cases are against German female ISIS members. But there is this one case against an Iraqi national, and it's the first universal jurisdiction case, that is happening in Europe for crimes against Yazidi. And the concept of universal jurisdiction is very important. It's a concept that allows states to prosecute someone who is not their national for a crime committed not in their country against a victim that is also not their national. So here we have an Iraqi who committed a crime against another Iraqi, so Yazidi here, in Iraq, and still Germany has the ability to prosecute that crime. And I think this is something really great, and it should be used more by European countries. But unfortunately, as you also know, European countries are very reluctant to take their nationals back because of security threats, because the public opinion is against it, and also because they don't have enough evidence. And I think this is where NGOs like Yazda and UNITAD can help, because we have been collecting that evidence, since 2015 for Yazda. And one of the challenges I have seen for, these cases happening abroad is the fact that there is no outreach in the community in Iraq. People in Iraq, Yazidi survivors, are not aware about the cases, for instance, in Germany. And this is very dangerous because these cases are meant to bring justice to them. And with time, we see that survivors don't even want to share their testimonies anymore because they became somehow cynical. They're saying nothing is happening. So this is another gap that NGOs can fill by producing some Q&As or videos, outreach that inform communities in Iraq that justice is actually happening. And just to finish, there's another very interesting case, very important in France. The cement plant Lafarge was indicted for crimes against humanity and for financing a terrorist group, because this company was paying bribes to ISIS and other terrorist groups in 2014 to keep their cement plant open in Syria. And in this case, Yazidi survivors joined as civil parties. And it's the first time in France that a company, so not a person, but a company, is indicted for crimes against humanity. And this really opens the way to more jurisprudence.
Thank you, Nadia and Murad, for the, really covered a lot of issues in there.
May I ask something, Haroro, if you don't mind?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, it's also important for us to know, and our audience who are listening. Murad, could you tell us more about the Sinjar Academy, the way it functions, but also how it can be actually helped and supported?
Yeah, thanks, Omar. So really, I see, back to my remarks, I see Iraq will not be able to sustain itself without jobs, without economy, without really looking the other side, other side of things. We need to bring technological advancement, computer science, languages, businesses to Iraq, every town in Iraq and every place. Otherwise, otherwise there's no way out. So Sinjar Academy is an attempt to take practical education, in terms of software development, IT, languages, businesses, and maybe vocational training as well for people to become electricians, for people to, fix things, to people to have jobs. With the study we did, as I said, 76 people are unemployed. And that's in Sinjar. Probably in Mosul, it's the same thing. If we don't put these young people to work, they will go, either they will migrate, leave the country, or they will do bad things, from all the way from drugs to terrorism, to other aspects of destroying the societies. So I think as Iraqis, all of us, we should work on the jobs creation and on the science and on the technology. And Iraq can, in fact, a lot of great people in Iraq who are who can compete on the international level in terms of technology and in terms of science. And I think if we prepare the ground for it, Iraq could become a hub to provide services not only in Iraq, but to the Middle East and internationally. In Sinjar Academy, we need help for people to come and help us to design the programs, for people to teach, for people to fund the program. It's really all volunteer-based so far. So if anyone is interested to help, we'll be very grateful. I was in Mosul as well. I just want to say that as well. With the University of Mosul, a lot of good things are happening in Mosul, and the fact that the University of Mosul is reopened, and you see thousands of students who are back to schools who are actually studying science, not theology or crazy madness. And I think Mosul has a lot of future as well. And to see people like Azma, like Amin, and other people like you, Omar, I think there's a lot of potential. But of course, in addition to that, let's say we have to also fix the political issues, disputed areas, all that. So a lot is on the play. But if we can, do some jobs creation and some, rebuild the economy, I think a lot of good things would start. But if we don't do that, I think things could go very wrong.
Thank you so much, Murad. And with this point on the business and the economy, I move to ask Asma, who is one of the youngest entrepreneurs in Mosul. Asma, how do you think the creating this safe space of business for women entrepreneurs can actually contribute to what we have all discussed, and also for a better future for women, men, and all the community?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, that before 2014, women and girls didn't have a role, didn't participate so much in the community. But what people back then didn't actually believe in, that women and girls may have creative ideas, can contribute in building a system that can help everyone. So now, when we are back to Mosul, when we started, now people are started more to think that girls and boys can be equal, can create opportunities, and together they can come up with better chances for everyone, to help everyone. So yeah, I don't want to really be, girls have creative ideas that can help. So yeah, now they're having their own chance to help and to build, and we're adding to each other, working in co-working places that can help everyone provide his own idea. Combining these ideas together can build a better sustainable system, and this will lead to a better environment where everyone can work and where everyone can success their work. So I don't know if that was a good answer for your question.
Perfect. It's a perfect answer. Thank you, Asma. And as someone who really loves and admires the music, I moved now to, I cannot address only one of them. I have to address them both because they are both musicians and both are active artists. Amin and Dashni, you both dedicate your talent and your profession to the rehabilitation of your own communities, and it even goes beyond this. How can we establish this culture of using our profession or using the music to get it more introduced in our communities? As you both know and have already elaborated, it's part of our culture, but at once it stopped, and then it needs to be put back on the stage. If you don't mind, I mean, I will start with Dashni. Sorry, Dashni, you are muted.
I think that's a great question. Music is healing, and art is a healing, and there's so much that we can do with that. We can start with the schools. Many of the schools don't have art classes. With my initiative, Green Kids, about 5 years ago, we built an art room in near Slemani. And the teacher said, now I will not stop my art classes and will continue giving classes. So we need to encourage the schools and they need to follow the rules that music classes are as important as the other classes, whether it's the language or religion that is provided in the class. But what I see is that the teachers don't take it serious, and the children don't mind, and the parents don't mind if they skip sport classes, especially for girls, and if they skip musical classes, if there are any musical classes. And I think right now, because of a century of war, right now we need music more than ever to heal all of us and to connect all of us. That's a good start, but also to do a lot of collaboration between bands from all over Iraq, to have them perform in random places, whether me and Amin connect and we perform on the street, or in a park without any announcement or making it into a big concert. And then there's the fact that there's so much more that we can do with music online to gather people. We need to support the artists by having rights that support us, good copyrights, to have better support on YouTube, because if we upload music, our royals are less than compared to a, let's say, artist from the Netherlands, because the advertising money is less for Iraq. So there's just a lot that we can do, is by protecting the rights of artists so that we can continue to make music independent, but also start with the schools by implementing music classes proper. That is a great start. And to have peace builders and initiatives to support by bringing artists together. That would be a great way.
Thank you so much, Dashni. I mean, you are also working with kids to teach them music.
Well, first, I would be so honored to work with you, Dashni. And let's please change contacts, and everybody, like Murad, Nadia, and Asma, I would be very happy to help with anything. And I work with, light orchestra, for instance, like a recent project. The first, the premiere for the orchestra, and the orchestra was mixed gender, and the idea was to make 50-50, like chance to boy and girl to have the same chances to be in the orchestra. So they become 30 musicians, but again, like, to bring ladies to this field is quite difficult. But again, we have 12 violinists. And that was a big thing. So the premiere was in a school in Noor, Hay Noor, which is a neighborhood in Mosul, and on the left side of the city. And you can find it online. We performed for was a girl like a primary school for a girl, and everybody was looking at us, and like it was a dream, really dream. I'm talking and I have this I just feel my skin is. The thing that we just played a simple song like Twinkle, Twinkle, for instance, and the kids start to sing with us very loud, and they start to come to especially it was a very interesting thing, they came to the ladies, the violinists. They just were touching them and having photos with them because they didn't see such a thing. I mean, the first musician I saw in my life when I was 20 years old, because I thought musicians are something, and this is crazy. So what I believe now, it's just putting these seeds, like spreading these seeds. Light orchestra basically are playing only in streets nearby, the ice cream shops everywhere in Mosul. And there's another group now, a couple called Hashim and Muhammad. They are playing one on guitar, the other on clarinet, and they're doing these flash mobs here and here. And this is the thing. We just put seeds. I mean, we only have this chance. We just put seeds, and these seeds will grow. So now I'm in Turkey, for instance. I'm here working in an organization. It's a circus organization, and contribution with a festival called Flying Carpet. And we are working with kids. Basically, the kids are from refugees from Iraq, Syria, and the Kurdish region here in Turkey. And I always feel attracted to these people because, I mean, all the traumatized people, it's the crazy thing, it's more safer for me to work here with these people more than to work in Iraq. And I know all the people knows, but it's very risky, especially I have a long tongue. So I talk about spicy things in a very direct way, because I believe like being so much diplomatic doesn't really affect now, because someone have to shout about justice in a very loud voice. And hopefully I will stay alive until we achieve our goals. So yeah, I would be very, very happy to work all of you guys again. And
we have a second proposal of collective work between Dashni and Amin after Ahmed al-Bashir. We also hope that Murad, I promise that I will get you teachers to teach at your Sinjar Academy. I thank you again. I leave the remarks to Harora, but also Dashni, I will never give up on the request for you to sing the song of freedom in Mosul. The floor is yours, Harora, for the closing remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I again just want to conclude today by thanking everyone for their time, and it's been excellent just to see how, you know, this event, this short event has really, I mean, the collaborations that have emerged from here, I think, are really going to make a significant impact. It's great to hear how you know, those outreach issues, for example, that Murad and Nadia had talked about. Well, this announcement, the Al-Bashir show will, you know, feature this issue. What a, you know, that's fantastic. And I think that these collaborations are going to, moving forward, are going to support the kind of work that Azmir does in empowering women and the business environment within Mosul, but of course Iraq more broadly. And of course, I can't wait to hear all about the musical collaborations that emerge from Amin and Dashni. So I guess, you know, the podcast, a lot of work has gone into that, has gone into the podcast, not just this year. This is a process that started well into last year. And you know, the report that's released today also has had kind of several kind of years and kind of related projects. But I think that it's appropriate that we end today, that we leave the last word, not to surprise you, of course, to leave the last word to Omar. Let's put this very simply.
Am I supposed to speak again?
This doesn't happen. This doesn't happen without Omar and his ongoing efforts. Omar's story is absolutely extraordinary by any measure. It's been, of course, a fantastic privilege for me to be able to work with him. I know that Andrew feels the same way. The entire program on extremism team that we have Omar as our colleague and friend means a lot, an enormous amount. And so I know that on behalf of the program, you know, it's been a great privilege for us. Of course, thank you for your efforts and for bringing really this all together. Omar, it is now right on time, so I'm going to leave the last word to you. And thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Harora. In fact, it's a collective work, and I learned a lot from this experience, and I hope to write not about Mosul, not about the podcast, not about any of this, but I will write about how when different ideas come together, like we are completely from different continents, when you share the same passion about knowledge, you can really produce the important literature and intellectual production. I will end with the same thing that we ended the podcast with, Harora, is that please do not give up on Mosul and its people, on Sinjar and its people, on Nineveh Plains and its people, on the people of Iraq, on Kurdistan, Erbil, Suleymaniya, Zakhu, Dahouk, on all of those people. Don't give up on them. I want to say this again and again. It's not something I live, it's something I hear from those people, because whoever would have gone through what they have went through, they will just like easily commit suicide. But the force and energy of believing in democracy and the future they have is just beyond imagination. And I repeat again, whoever is hearing me and whoever is going to listen to me in the coming days and the future, do not give up on those people, the youth of all these communities, because they are the force of hope and change. And it's not the false hope, actually. It's the hope that is based on facts. And I will also repeat what an Afghan scholar mentioned after all what she witnessed in this horrifying events recently. She said, hope is a moral obligation, a moral and intellectual obligation. So what you do, what you produce is actually, the change you produce is actually the hope you make. That's how it works. And I hope all of you will achieve your goals, and all your noble goals for your own communities will be met. And because everything you do is not only contributing to your community, but to all the rest of the people. Thank you again. I want to make a very small confession and announcement. I don't know if he is with us today or not, but we have used the voiceover for reading some of the text. They were horrifying text, but the voiceover is done by a friend of mine who is a New York-based Jewish rabbi, Rabbi Asa. And it is just fascinating. And we wanted to do this kind of a message to say that, look, we are reading your text, but who is reading them? He is our friend, the Jewish rabbi Asa, who is also volunteering now to help Afghans, rescue Afghans from Afghanistan. So all the thanks goes to Rabbi Asa. He's also a historian. You will probably notice his voiceover in the podcast. I just wanted to release this. I couldn't keep it anymore. We have to announce it. Thank you so much. And good night to those who are going to sleep, and enjoy the rest of your day who are still in their early time. Ciao.
Thank you.